I will say this, Mr. Wray, I am one of those sheriffs that will be very blunt with you today. That's right here. I've had an opportunity to look at your testimony, lots of stuff, and hear about numerous task forces, crimes being committed against children, including even infants and toddlers, MS-13 gang members coming across the open southern border, the poisoning and killing of the American people with fentanyl, the sex trafficking, the human trafficking. It's quite clear, it is clear that you guys are dealing with some of the sickest bastards in our society. I have an article here from CNN in January 2022 calling the January 6th investigation the biggest investigation in FBI history. And what shocks me about this, quite honestly, is that you don't mention January 6th, again, the biggest investigation, not one time in your 14-page testimony. You don't mention it one time. And that makes me ask myself the question, what the hell are you hiding? Sir, you mentioned 38,000 agents and support personnel in your agency. How many FBI agents and support personnel have you assigned to the January 6th investigation?
I don't know that I know the number. I know we have a lot of people working on it in multiple field
Fair
offices.
enough, lots.
Yeah.
Knowing that you are dealing with some of the sickest people in our society with investigations related to child sex trafficking, have you reassigned any of these agents or personnel to investigate January 6th? Yes or no?
I don't believe we have reassigned people away from child exploitation to January 6th.
Now, let me just say this, Director. I find that answer disturbing because last month, Steve Friend, he testified before the Weaponization Committee. Mr. Friend was a domestic terrorism investigator for you, and he was told by one of his superiors that January 6th was, I quote, a higher priority than pursuing child pornography cases, end quote. And for those of you watching in America, understand today's FBI is more concerned about searching for and arresting Grandma and Grandpa for entering the Capitol building that day than pursuing the sick individuals in our society who prey on our children. And Mr. Wray, your priorities are flawed. But let's rehash what we know so far, all right? It's the largest investigation in FBI history, and you don't mention it in your testimony. Agents have been reassigned from child exploitation cases and so on. So now let's get into the money, Mr. Wray. How much taxpayer money has been spent on January 6th?
I don't know that I have the figure.
Oh, you don't have it
in my head, but
Mr. Wray, I got an article here, December 22, 2022, 2 years after the events of January 6th, and it says the Justice Department has requested another $34 million from Congress. And number one, you shouldn't get another dime. The FBI shouldn't get another dime for this political witch hunt against the greatest president in my lifetime, Donald J. Trump. I want to turn my attention now to this fella, this character, Mr. Ray Epps. We've all heard of him. We've heard of Mr. Ray Epps. He was number 16 on your FBI most wanted list. He was encouraging people the night prior and the day of to go into the Capitol. And Mr. Ray Epps can be seen at the first breach of Capitol grounds at approximately 12:50 p.m. Play the clip, please. There he is, breaching the line, going in at the first breach into the Capitol grounds, a restricted area. Mr. Ray, you have arrested hundreds of people related to January 6th. And there have been people arrested for breaching Capitol grounds. Couey Griffin is an example. Rachel Genko is an example. And then we go to Mr. Brandon Strecka. Brandon was arrested for disorderly and disruptive conduct, which included yelling, I quote, "Go, go, go," as rioters tried to enter the Capitol. These three never went into the Capitol. They never assaulted anyone. So let's be honest with each other. There is very little difference between the actions of Ray Epps and Brandon Strecka that day, but yet Strecka was arrested and Epps wasn't. Epps also testified to the January 6th committee. He was back at his hotel when video evidence showed that he wasn't. He lied. He was on the Capitol grounds just as Brandon Strecka was. Epps even texted his nephew at 2:12 p.m. and said, I quote, "I was in the front with a few others." It was on the video. "I also orchestrated it." Now look into the camera, sir, when you answer my next question. Are you going to arrest Mr. Epps, yes or no?
I'm not going to engage here in a discussion about individual people who are or are not going to be prosecuted.
Can I get a commitment? You just watched the video. I'm an old law dog. I understand a little bit about probable cause. He did very little. There was very little difference what he did and Mr. Strecka. You can see him. He's encouraging, I almost think he's inciting a riot. He's encouraging people the night prior to go into the Capitol, the day of, go into the Capitol, and he was at the first breach, and he breached the restricted area. Everybody, a lot of people getting arrested for not going into the Capitol, but they're in the restricted area, but yet, Wray Epps, who many people feel, fed, right? And there's a lot of cloud over this. So my point is this. You arrested a lot of folks for unlawful activity. You just saw the video. And I will tell you, Mr. Wray, if you don't arrest Mr. Epps, there's a reason behind it. I believe you know what it is. And it appears to me you are protecting this guy. I strongly recommend you get your house back in order. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, if I might briefly.
Gentlemen, will respond, and we got a couple point of orders.
It is
Not
never,
unanimous consent, excuse me. Go ahead.
it has never been appropriate for an FBI director in congressional testimony to be weighing in on who is or isn't going to be arrested and who is or isn't going to get charged, which is a prosecutor's decision. If you are suggesting that the violence that at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or FBI agents, the answer is no, it was not. And to suggest otherwise is a disservice to our hardworking, dedicated law enforcement professionals.
Can I respond to that now that, the point is, he was number 16 on your list.
Yeah,
he was 16 on your list. You never arrested him. But hundreds of Americans were arrested. Shame on you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida for unanimous consent.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent for all members have 5 legislative days to submit any additional materials as well as any questions for the record for the director. And I would hope that those questions for the record we would submit would receive more timely responses than some of our letters have. I would further seek unanimous consent that the WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden I used earlier in the hearing be submitted for the record.
Well, without objection, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a unanimous consent request that a article from the Daily Mail dated today with the headline, January 6th protester Wray Epps reveals he's forced to live in an RV in hiding after death threats over FBI informant conspiracy. Feds confirm he's never worked for them as he slams right-wing theorists using him as a scapegoat. I'd like to offer this into the record.
Without objection, chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for your time today. You said earlier in response to Representative Iss's questions that the job of the FBI is to, 1, undertake criminal investigations, and 2, protect the U.S. from national security threats. Would you agree with me that in doing those activities, the FBI has to do a lot of that in what are effectively confidential conditions? Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you're undertaking those activities in those confidential conditions, you're going to require tools that have been appropriated by Congress in the past, tools that say to you, we're going to trust you to use those tools correctly, and in return, the FBI then is expected to not abuse the trust of those tools that are provided to the FBI to undertake its activities. Is that a correct statement as well?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So trust is a very important thing, both the giving of trust when you get those tools, and then making sure that you do not abuse those that trust once those tools have been given to you. Were you aware that according to a recent poll by Harvard Caps Harris, 70% of respondents in the United States said that they were either very or somewhat concerned about interference by the FBI and other intelligence agencies in the elections? Were you aware of that?
I'm not aware of the particular survey or poll or study or whatever it is.
In that same poll, 71% of Americans, which is certainly a bipartisan group, agreed that internal FBI changes post-2016 had not done enough to prevent further interference in elections, and that, quote, wide-ranging reform was still required. And again, you're not aware of those numbers?
No.
Does any of that shock you?
You know, I don't spend a lot of time as FBI director worrying about polls. What I do look at is whether people want to work with us, whether people want to work for us. And on both of those metrics, we're actually going up quite significantly. In fact, in your home state of Texas, we've got a 93% increase in the number of Texans applying to work for the FBI.
Well,
since I've
even if
been in
you
this
don't
job.
look at
And in
the-
fact, it's the highest, Texas has more people applying to work for the FBI than any other state in the union.
Even if you do not watch polls, certainly you appreciate the fact that you want the trust of the American people. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. Does it bother you that so many Americans do not trust the FBI presently?
Well, again, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about polls. I do care about what I hear
I'm
from the
asking about
American
the
people
trust.
otherwise. But it bothers me anytime any American has lost trust in the FBI. Of course, that concerns me.
Earlier, you're talking to Representative Hageman, and you said where we can take action where possible to remove them from the chain of command, and then you ended your time, you got cut off because we had to get some votes. You were going to say something further on that. Do you have any plans to remove anybody from the chain of command or go through a process to determine who should be removed from the chain of command?
Well, I have already removed any number of people from at different stages of my tenure from the chain of command. I have also referred people to our disciplinary arm, which has resulted in some cases in termination.
Do you have any plans to do any more of that?
If somebody has violated a rule, absolutely.
When we talk about a good faith basis for trust of Americans, both Republicans and Democrats, does it bother you that these illegal FISA queries have continued even with efforts of the FBI to try to reduce them, that we now have somewhere between a couple 100,000 and at least 1 million of illegal FISA queries?
Well, there are two things going on there. One, I think your numbers of what are actually illegal are off. But second, and more importantly to me, all of the changes that we have put in place to address compliance failures that I consider unacceptable have pointed to the effectiveness of the reforms that we put in place. So that I'm talking about.
What number of illegal FISA queries would you put on the table as those that you know of?
Well, here's what I can tell you. The most recent FISA court opinion found, I think it's a like 98% compliance rate. The most recent DOJ audit found a 99 or 98% compliance rate.
Is that acceptable to you? Is that 1% or 2%?
We strive, no, we strive for 100%. But all of those things, whether it's the FISC, the FISA court, whether it's ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, whether it's DOJ, whether it's our own Office of Internal Audit, which I created, by the way, all four of those things have shown that the reforms that we've been putting in place have already had dramatic positive impact. Am I satisfied with that? No.
Has anybody been fired or removed as a result of their inappropriate use of FISA?
Well, the last time somebody has had truly abusive behavior with respect to FISA, it goes back a ways, but those people have been gone from the organization.
Are you making a distinction between truly abusive and just abusive? What's the distinction there?
Well, the distinction I would draw is between intentional or reckless conduct versus somebody who makes a good faith mistake. To me, a good faith mistake is still a compliance violation, and still somebody needs to be counseled and trained and coached and taught to do it right, but that's different from somebody who intentionally or recklessly breaks the rules.
Director Wray, I'm going to go back where I started, and that is with trust. We trust you when we give the FBI tools. We trust that those tools would not be abused. I think in the last 6 years, certainly we've seen a number of abuses of the tools given, and I think as a result of that, you're going to see a curtailment of some of the tools that are provided to the FBI. That's not a choice that we're in a position that we want to make, but we have to make as a result of the abuses of the trust of the American people. Thank you.
Trọn đêm nay để nhớ thương anh, em nghe tình yêu thức dậy êm đềm, nhớ từng nụ cười ánh mắt, nhớ lời ngọt ngào âu yếm, tóc em thơm giấc ngủ dịu. Biết giờ này anh có nhớ em không? dậy trong lòng. Đêm từng màu thời gian đến, bóng hình người mình yêu mến, ôi nhớ gì hơn nhớ người yêu. Anh ơi, lòng em thì rất chân thành, ước nguyện trọn đời yêu anh, chớ đừng giận hơn em nhé. Anh ơi, đừng bao giờ nói chia lìa, sẽ làm tội nghiệp em lắm, đã thương nhau chớ phụ tình nhau. Thức trọn đêm nay để nhớ thương anh, sương rơi lạnh câm cạnh vật im lìm. Ước gì mình đừng ngăn cách, ước gì nhà mình chung vách, hai đứa mình thức trắng đêm nay. Anh ơi, lòng em thì rất chân thành, ước nguyện trọn đời yêu anh, chớ đừng giận hơn em nhé. Anh ơi, đừng bao giờ nói chia lìa, sẽ làm tội nghiệp em lắm, đã thương nhau chớ phụ tình nhau. Thức trọn đêm nay để nhớ thương anh, sương rơi lạnh câm cạnh vật im lìm. Ước gì mình đừng ngăn cách, ước gì nhà mình chung vách, hai đứa mình thức trắng đêm nay. Ước gì mình đừng ngăn cách, ước gì nhà mình chung vách, hai đứa mình